How are you? We've all heard the saying, there are 1,000 Hamlets in 1,000 readers' eyes. Today, we're discussing the book Hamlet. Penned in 1599, it stands as Shakespeare's longest play and is renowned as one of his 4 great tragedies, alongside Othello, King Lear, and Macbeth. Undoubtedly, among these 4 tragedies, Hamlet stands out as the most beloved by audiences and readers alike. It's also one of the most adapted stories in cinema, second only to Cinderella. Hamlet has been translated under various titles, with some of the more familiar ones being The Prince's Revenge, Hamu Leiter, and Hanmu Leiter. The story follows Prince Hamlet of Denmark, who discovers that his uncle Claudius murdered his father, usurped the throne, and married Hamlet's mother, Gertrude. Hamlet vows to avenge his father's death. Today, let's dive into the Hamlet you've probably heard of, but may not have read. Every story has a code, a key that unlocks its essence. To really understand Hamlet, you need to find that key. In my view, the key is encapsulated in the word fate. How does fate work? Is there such a thing as destiny? Can people defy their fate? Today we'll explore these questions as we delve into our reading. So, who is Hamlet? He's the Prince of Denmark, the direct heir to the throne. From the moment of his birth, he had everything many people dream of, a great honor, royal favor, and the shelter of his country and parents. He could do anything he wanted. Consequently, Hamlet's life unfolded effortlessly. He studied in Wittenberg, made interesting friends, traveled, and engaged in a romantic relationship with the woman he loved. At the beginning of the story, Hamlet learns by chance about his father's death while studying in Germany. He rushes back to the palace to pay his last respects. But when he arrives, he finds that his uncle has seized the throne and swiftly wed his mother, who only a month after becoming a widow, has remarried. The throne he once envisioned as his own is now beyond his grasp. Let's untangle the relationships. Hamlet's father, Old Hamlet, was the former king. Hamlet's uncle, Claudius, is the new king. Hamlet's mother, Gertrude, was the former queen of Denmark and is now the current queen. The country, the crown, and the queen remain the same, but the person holding all of it has changed, from Hamlet's father to his uncle. Hamlet, who was set to inherit the throne, now finds himself in a very awkward position. He is shocked and cannot accept what has happened. Shakespeare famously writes in the original text, "Frailty, thy name is woman." Within a month ago, she, referring to his mother, was, even before she had broken in the shoes she wore to his funeral, crying like crazy. Even an animal would have mourned its mate longer than she did. There she was marrying my uncle, my father's brother, who's about as much like my father as I'm like Hercules. Less than a month after my father's death, even before the tears on her cheeks had dried, she remarried. Oh, so quick to jump into a bed of incest. That's not good, and no good can come of it either. But my heart must break in silence, since I can't mention my feelings aloud. This is a classic Shakespearean long sentence. You can sense this style in the book Palace of Desire, which we discussed earlier. We've also experienced this kind of elaborate language in Shakespeare's other work, Romeo and Juliet. Hamlet cannot come to terms with his mother's actions. He believes that her marriage is incestuous and that it will not end well. As for this surprising union, Hamlet's uncle, the reigning King Claudius, says, "Though my memories of my brother Hamlet are still fresh, and though it was proper for me and our entire kingdom to grieve for him, life doesn't stop. And so, while we must remember to mourn for him, it is also wise to remember our happiness. Therefore, with sad joy, with one eye merry and the other crying, with laughter at a funeral and grieving at a wedding, with equal measures of happiness and sadness, I have married my former sister-in-law, who inherited some right of her own to rule this nation, and made her my queen." In Act 1, Scene 2 of the play, after Claudius delivers his speech and deems his explanation sufficient, he moves on to discuss state affairs with his courtiers. Meanwhile, Hamlet, an observer of the wedding, sums up his feelings about the situation. He feels that everything around him has changed. Extraordinarily close relatives, indifferent strangers. This is the state Hamlet finds himself in. From being a prince in the limelight with everything going smoothly, he suddenly becomes melancholic and is often consumed by thoughts of suicide. This shift is entirely reasonable given the circumstances. With his strong and vigorous uncle seizing the throne, the prince, momentarily pushed aside and unable to ascend to kingship, feels deeply disheartened. Adding to his distress, his mother's insatiable desires drive her into a hasty remarriage, indulging in unrestrained pleasure with his uncle. This makes him extremely angry. Isn't this scene quite dramatic? Absolutely yes, and the dramatic tension it creates has inspired many works. For example, director Feng Xiaogang's film The Banquet is essentially a retelling of the Hamlet story. As we continue, we'll uncover numerous classic scenes and emotional depths within this tale. As a prince, Hamlet's attitude toward fate is far from consistent. It fluctuates and at times contradicts itself. He is a deeply conflicted individual, and the upheavals in his family lead him to doubt human nature. In his anger and despair, he comes to believe that fate is capricious. It doesn't favor the virtuous, nor condemn the wicked, instead bringing calamity upon those in positions of power. This is a classic example of blaming fate.